Hi, Mark here from the Tangibound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangibound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangibound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangiboundNetwork.com and see if Tangibound Network is right for you.
Sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. A life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of The Crazy Life. I'm Brian, and joining me as usual is Henno.
Hello!
And once again, not joining us as usual is Jen.
Under the bus.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say much this week, because boy, I mean, it took us a while to get a day to record together.
Yeah, well, yeah. Holiday weekend and all.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I just couldn't get schedules to line up really, so yeah. Yeah, Jen should be back next week, I hope, cause yeah, next week we've got a guest joining us.
A guest, yes.
Well, you'll have to listen to find out.
Yes, you will have to listen to find out. It's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, it should be. Oh man.
Tease. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh, it's so true.
Yep. So how was your week and a half?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pretty good. Let's see. Since I end up working on Sundays and Mondays just so that we have coverage at my work. Not that it's really necessary at this time of year, but that means I take Wednesday I take Thursday, Friday, Saturday as my 3-day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that happened on Wednesday was I'm doing a job that is basically the only way I can describe it is as I'm matching a fingerprint with drywall mud, paint, and then a glaze over the top of it.
Wow, this sounds like a lot of fun.
It's been a real load of fun. When I finally got the various elements, and by the way, I consulted with someone that does this stuff. He's amazing. We have plaster walls, and so when they do plaster, the Italian, like a Mediterranean plaster, what they're doing is they've got this giant vat of liquid and they're pouring a colorant into it so it swirls.
Okay.
And then when they pull out the plaster, that's how you get the different colors.
Okay.
When it's finally finished, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can have some extreme colors. And this guy Jeff, who he learned how to do matching through matching countertops. I'm sorry, like stone, like marble and granite.
Okay.
So he learned to fix like chips and stuff in stone, and that's how he got his eye, and he's applied that to matching plaster, and he's done some amazing work. He and I typically do the drywall repairs, and then we call him in, and he just has his little palette of paints, and he does this amazing match.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
I
cool.
contacted him. So what this is somebody made a beam out of plaster. There's wood beams all through this building, this unit, and one of the beams turned out not to be wood. It's plaster made to look like wood.
Right.
The only good thing in this entire endeavor was that I still had the original glaze. So what they did is they put plaster on, then they apply a glaze, which is like a stain over it. And, otherwise, so I still have to match the base color, and I already have some things that match, but then I have to literally scrape through, I have to apply the plaster or the drywall mud in a way that it resembles the wood, the faux wood that they already did.
Right.
So it's been an adventure, but so I finally got my sample done, to where I did a small section. And I'm like, okay, this is how I can copy this. I'm good. I'm ready. Okay, let's do it. So last week I got it done. Wednesday came along. I'm like, all right, let's do my glaze. And I started putting the glaze on, and it just wasn't matching the sample.
Oh.
And I was like, oh man, how close, is that bad? Is it, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, yeah, or maybe I can fix this. So I start trying to fix it, and I ultimately just made everything worse.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, and it was so, I would have stayed there all night long. I would have just redone it all over, and now I have to be off for 3 days. And I generally don't like leaving. If anybody walked in there and looked at it, they would have been like, dude, what were you thinking?
Yeah. Right.
Because one of the things I really pride myself at my work is when, we've cut holes in walls, and you walk back in, you can't tell that there were holes in the walls.
Right.
I mean, I really take pride in my drywall work to where it looks like nobody was there. We've had professionals come in. I can see where their patches were because they're all about production, and I don't have to worry about that. It's not for profit.
Right.
I needed to make it look perfect.
Right.
And so that's my level of expectation for myself too. And this is the paint guys at the paint store says you're matching a fingerprint.
Yeah.
Which is that's my way of giving myself an out if it's not perfect.
Right.
But it was one of the hardest things for me. I have not felt that bad about myself in a long time. It's been a long time since I went home where I just felt, I didn't beat myself up per se, but it was incomplete.
Yeah.
I did not get the job done, and I just couch locked myself. It was weird.
Yeah.
It's been a while. And luckily the next day I got up, took the dogs for a walk, it's my day off, and it all went away, and I'm like, okay, I can wait. Cause I even considered going up there on Saturday and getting a start before Sunday. Cause, I just have to do various layers of this or that. And I figured out what I did wrong, that's the good part. There was a good learning experience in this. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to redo this, and I know what I'm going to do different, and it's not going to happen, cross fingers, hope. But
right.
It was a good lesson for me. These are always difficult, but they're growth experiences. I mean, that's just the way it is. And to be patient, not to you can't fix everything. Sometimes you just have to, and I try to apply this in my life, especially, this is really hard with personal relationships or things that are going wrong at work. You want to fix it right away. You want to get it out of the way. You don't want to leave it hang. But you know what? Yeah. Life isn't like that. Sometimes things have to take time. Sometimes things have to follow a process.
Yep.
And it's how, I look at it as I want to see how I handle these, how I handle things like this is where I want to make myself a better human.
Right. Well, not to mention too, is when you, how you were spending all that time trying to get it right. It's how it is. I did this when I was drawing, that there's just, and I'm sure you've done it with music and stuff too, as well as your work, that there's just some times where you're I've spent too much time staring at this. I need to walk away, come back tomorrow with a fresh look.
Yep.
And
get fresh perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's a good metaphor for life too.
Yeah.
That's one of the things with me with 12 steps is Sharon doesn't do it, but one of my ex would say, you think you might want to go to a meeting? I was like, and it wasn't out of that there was something wrong with me, but it was like she knew that when I got out of hanging out and talking to my peeps, that I had a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I kind of did that to you on here the one time, remember? Yeah.
Yep. And it's true because I know what happens. I become less. I even called myself out on it, maybe a month ago or so, where I was like, I know I'm becoming more self-centered.
Yeah.
And when I go to my meetings, I become a little more other-centered. And I will be more likely to apologize or to find my part in something, that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So that was and I ended up having a great time, and I got a lot of work done in my yard, which I really enjoy on Saturday. It's just been we've had just crummy weather, so it's just been a bummer. But hopefully it'll start getting better. And then, let's see, what else happened? Other than that, I got back to work on Sunday and went back at my little project, and tomorrow I glaze it again, and I feel like I'm pretty ready for it.
Ah, cool.
Which is good. My boss has been out of town. He's coming back tomorrow, which always just brings up a lot of anxiety for everybody.
Right, yeah.
It's weird when you have somebody leave and you notice the difference.
Yeah. You know what's funny? My brain didn't even go that way. My brain was more along the lines of, like, when you have like a manager or something leave, everybody's doing like, you look at the week and go, okay, here's kind of my plan for the week or whatever. And then they come back and they've got to ask you a bunch of questions about the previous week or point out something they want changed. So it interrupts you. That's more I was thinking. And I didn't even think about the other part of it.
Yeah.
Which is worse. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, otherwise not much has happened. I'm like a week or what is it? 2 weeks now? We're really close to my 1 year anniversary. Woo.
Oh yeah, you are, aren't you? Wow.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's been kind of an interesting thing because I talked to Sharon. I was like, what? Is there something, do you want to do something? Is there something specific you want to do? And she's really like, no, not really. We've been talking about getting some tattoos together, which might be kind of fun.
Right. Well, so as long as her answer isn't get a divorce, I think you're doing good.
I think you're good, yeah.
What do you want to do for our anniversary? You've been served, and walks away.
Yeah. Well, the funny part is this is what I loved last night. She's like, it's been, whatever, officially 6 years or whatever since we started dating. Mm. And she's like, that's the longest with anybody, huh? I win. It was all a big competition. I'm the winner. I'm the winner dance around the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. You certainly don't want to play devil's advocate there and be like, well, maybe the others were just smart enough to get out. Because I don't think that ends well for you if you go that route.
No, it does not.
No.
Yeah, so that's about it for me. How about you?
It's been a pretty good week. I've still been productive, which is felt pretty awesome. I had a couple days ago I had a day where I was just like, I don't feel like doing anything today. And, I just kind of rode that out and stuff, it's been 90 plus here the last 3 days or so, and and tomorrow it's supposed to be close. I think it's supposed to be like 88 or something, but from the last time I looked, and again, humidity usually with it. One of the days was just hot. It was like 97, but it was just hot. The next day it was like 94, but we had like 70% humidity or something like that. It was ridiculous. So, it's like I've even gone out in that. Normally when the weather hits like that, I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Cause for anyone new to the show, me and heat don't go well together. But yeah, I went out with my brother cause, Toys R Us is closing, so they got all their stuff's like 50-60% off. So we've gone around to a few Toys R Us over the last week. Just kind of looking for stuff that we were interested in or whatever. So it's, that's been kind of fun to get out and do that a little bit. Even except for in the heat, that's no fun. No fun.
Oh, jeez, it's terrible.
But that's there was that, and I got all the appointments I needed to make completely done. I don't remember, did I talk last week about getting a new neurologist?
I think you talked about trying to get a referral.
Okay. Well, I got the referral, and they wrote 2 names on the list, or on a piece of, or on a Post-it. And, we're like, these 2 take your insurance, and they're the closest 2, And I looked, and I was like, man, they're both an hour away, whatever, And I called the first one, and they're like, yeah, we don't take your insurance. And I was like, oh, okay. So I look up on the insurance website, called like 3 or 4 other ones, and every one of them it was like, no, we don't take your insurance. And I'm like, that's funny because you're on the website and it says you take this.
On the insurance company's
On the insurance,
website.
yeah. So I was like, well, I'm going to call the insurance and see. And when I called and I'm talking to the woman, I was like, well, I can verify for you that this place, these all don't take my insurance. I was like, you guys should change that on the website. Just in case, so somebody does. Well, most of the places. Oh my,
Jax. Hi hole.
Most of the places now, when you say I'm a new patient, they'll ask you, what your insurance is. But so I'm talking to a woman on there, and I'm like, do you have anything closer to me than an hour? And she was like, no. She's like, where you're at, and there's neurologists near me in Toledo, like 15 minutes from here. But they don't take my insurance, so it doesn't, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so I get off the phone with her, and she gave me a couple more numbers to call. And when I looked at where they were, I was like, man, this one's farther than this other number I didn't call. Whatever. So I was like, screw it. I'll just, so I called the second number. And, woman on the phone was like, yep, we take your insurance. And she's like, it was with the doctor's last name is Ahmad. And I was like, and she's like, well, I was like, I need to make an appointment with Dr. Ahmad. And she goes, which one? And I'm like, it looks like they might be brothers. Cause one is 41, the other one's 42, I think, or 40, 41, something like, so they're really close in age. So I'm guessing, or it's just coincidental, who knows, or cousins or whatever. So I was basically like, hey, whoever's available first, and she's like, well, if you go through this one, she's like, I can get you in by the end of the month. And I'm like, sweet, cause normally neurologists are like, the one I went to before, I would schedule 3-4 months out, And,
wow.
Like my mom goes to a neurologist, every so often, and she's got to make her appointments because hers books like almost up to 6 months out. Like,
wow, so this is like serious specialist kind of stuff.
So it's like, man, so, I'm thinking awesome, and then she goes, okay, well, do you want to go to the Taylor location or the Monroe location? And Taylor's about 40-ish minutes from my house. Monroe's about 20, 25 minutes. And I'm like, you have a Monroe location? She's like, yep. I was like, Monroe then. And she's like, well, that's going to push it out a few more weeks. I'm like, totally okay. I was like, I'm so happy. Not as much now, but like, when the weather gets worse, like I was telling Tony, like pretty much if you've listened to Salty Language, you've heard this whole thing already. But, the weather in Michigan is really weird in that, like, there's a lot of times we will have flurries here. Detroit, which is, about an hour north-ish, they'll be just getting pounded with snow. Or it'll be like raining like crazy and be completely sunny here. It's, even if you go to like Monroe a lot of times, the weather's way different than here. So, in the winter, you don't want to keep going north in Michigan. You want to stay as far south as you can.
Plan. Yeah.
So, so I was really happy by that. And I'm sitting there kind of kicking myself though, because it's like, I hate making phone calls, right? The doctor's office gave me 2 numbers, and instead of starting with those 2 numbers, I only started with one, and then I avoided the other one, and the other one ended up being the answer. I could have just made 2 phone calls and been out, done. Instead, I made like 6 or something like that. So, but I did it. I sat here and I called one after another. I didn't put it off like 4 days or whatever. Like the day after I got the referral, because I had to wait because my doctor's appointment was too close to closing for most of them,
Yeah.
So, and and so I got one more thing. So that was good, and I had a nice moment where, again, this is on salty language. Sorry, folks. I was in the store the other day and I just had a few things to get. And, being a dumb guy, I'm like, I got this. I don't need a basket or some sissy little cart or whatever.
Yeah.
So I got bread and hot dog buns and I see they had a beer that I really like. So I grabbed that. And then I remember I have to get cat litter. So I grabbed that and, they have those plastic handles on them that are like seriously like holding a razor knife, And, I get toward the front and this thing is just digging into my finger. And I'm like, I'm going to drop everything because, holding the plastic bread things together, the 2 of them are sliding, and I can't, I can't use my other hand to stop them from sliding.
We're going down.
Right. So I set the cat litter down and I go to set the bread on, they had these like, this table full of like angel food cakes or whatever. And I set the bread down on it and I knock like 7 of these things all over the floor. The lids get dented and then I start dropping everything else except the beer I'm holding.
Of course.
Yeah. And
his priorities.
Right. The handle did rip on it though. Like it was, if I would have had to carry it any further with the way I was, I probably would have dropped the beer. I didn't realize it was tearing.
Potential breakage.
Yeah. And I would have cried.
Yes, exactly. Tears would have flowed.
Man. But it's so funny because, in the past, I would have probably blown up at that. I would have been so pissed at myself.
For what? For which part of it?
Just mainly because I ended up getting embarrassed. Now I didn't even really get embarrassed. A woman came up and just started helping me and, and I was just like, meh, whatever, and I walked up to the, cash register and the cashier, just was like, I noticed you didn't drop the beer. I was like, priorities.
A little hard time there. Yeah, that's great.
But that's fair. I'm totally, it's like, look, I mean, it's, I just threw a bunch of these cakes on the floor, so whatever. But yeah.
You're trying to be impressive.
Yeah. But I would have also been mad at myself for not just, for not grabbing a basket. That's what those are for, is that exact scenario, cause if I had one of those baskets, the bread, the beer, everything else I had would have fit in there, and then the other hand would have had the cat litter. If the cat litter became too much, I could have sat it down and switched hands, nice and easy, instead of throwing cakes everywhere. Oh man. But, and it's funny though, because like I said, it really is just deeply rooted in stupid masculinity, it's like, when you're bringing groceries in from the car and you see like, you have like 40 bags and you're like, one trip, I got this.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, I've done that. The story, where you got the arms full of stuff and you're like and you're like, oh man, I forgot that one thing. And then you load that one up into the crook of your arm and you're just like, oh boy, this is all,
it's all coming down. Yep. That's what I mean. It's just like, man, seriously, dude, it's like, just take the dang, thing. Cause it's like, no one cares. No one's gonna look at you and be like, oh, look at that guy, he needs a basket. It's like, no one gives a shit.
No.
Oh, whoops, sorry. No one cares, so it's like, why am I letting this dictate my behavior?
Yeah.
It's like, nobody cares. So, yeah. I learned my lesson though. I went in the store today, just had a few things to get, grabbed a basket. And the funny part is I didn't need it. Like, I easily could have carried, like, by the time I was done, I was like, I could have carried this with, without it, but yeah.
But hey, learning.
Yeah.
adulting.
Yeah, exactly.
Go figure.
Yeah, right. But yeah, you know, my first reaction actually was, I just started laughing, and I got out to the car and I was laughing when I told my mom. And when I told Tony, I was laughing, you know, and I'm smiling while I'm telling you, because it's just, to me, it's just funny, you know, it's just, what else can I do at that point, you know? Could have got mad and started throwing cakes around or something, but, you know, whatever.
He hates these cakes.
Yeah. You know what, I will say, one of the things that really helped, though, was that they didn't get, like, destroyed. You know, if I had knocked them over and they had just gone everywhere. You know, but they're angel food cakes. It'd take a lot to really destroy them. You know, they're just going to be like sponges hitting the floor. But yeah, like I said, some of the lids dented, but that was no big deal. So yeah, good fun.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah. So, you know, good thing to have happen to you once in a while. Just, you know, keep you humble.
It really is. I think it's so good to be given the opportunity to laugh at myself.
Yep.
I mean, just flat out.
Yeah. And of course, you know, the store was busy too. It wasn't like there was nobody in there. Of course, there was all these people around the checkout, you know, so yeah. But like I said, I don't care what any of them thought. And plus, what's somebody going to say? We've probably all done something, maybe not with the cakes, but dropped stuff, you know, like you said. How many times you got like all the stuff, you're like, I can get this. Yeah. I do it all the time with milk. That's the thing I'm most common with, is I'll have a handful of other stuff and we'll need milk, and I'll I can carry 2 gallons from the back of the store to the front, which physically, yes, I can, but I'm not thinking about how cold the milk gets in your hand and that it'd be nice to switch hands.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I've learned that lesson too, but yeah. Anyway. So yeah, I think that's, yeah, pretty sure that's been my week. It's been something. It's been good.
But how awesome.
Yeah.
No dramas in anybody's life, no major anythings, and that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It's been pretty good. Like I said, been getting stuff done, and only really had one day that was, and I honestly think the only reason that day was like that was because I had gone out with my brother like 3 days in a row. And I think that was just my body, more of it just going, okay, hey, you need to, stay in today because social anxiety kind of a thing. Like, let this calm down and then you're good to go. But, whatever. Like I said, I just wrote it out and it was fine. And then the next day I just didn't let it, get a control over me. So, yeah.
My kind of silly win for the week is my video game is not consuming me.
That's really good, actually, It
is. I'm just enjoying it from little bits of time like you're supposed to do it.
Right. Like I've done that with Twitter. I've cut way back on how much time I'm spending in the like chat groups and stuff on there. And, I'm trying really hard not to not to get lured back in, basically, because it's so easy to just start talking with everybody. And I'm getting other stuff done, and it's like, as long as that's happening, it's helpful. When I've got not much to do, then it's going to be a problem, but who knows, maybe by then I won't have an itch for it, I don't know.
Well, and that was my thing, was I really wanted to make sure that I stayed in my priorities.
Yeah.
So when we had, I had rehearsals, I was ready for rehearsal. If I needed to get some other songs worked out before rehearsal, I did. And, and so like last night, I was super tired, didn't sleep really well the night before, and I just didn't feel like doing anything. I played a little bit of music, and then I just sat on the couch, and for 2 hours put some TV on and played video games.
Yeah.
That was perfectly okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt good about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because I feel like everything in balance, which is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I did that a couple of nights ago, like when, after being out with my brother, I was like, there was some stuff I wanted to do, but I just really wasn't, I was kind of like, I think I'm done for the night. I think I'm just going to not.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing, basically. I just sat in bed and had, my phone out and was bouncing between a game I play and Twitter, basically. And I was like, you know what? I'm not beating myself up over this. This is just, I'm essentially trying to just relax, and this is, that's what I'm doing. But then the next day I was barely on Twitter until later in, like till like 7 or 8 at night, cause I was doing stuff. So, yeah. And yeah, it's for the best. Even though, cause again, really the reason I went to Twitter was to help get depressed thoughts out of my head.
Oh.
And, it's amazing when you change your frame of mind, you don't have those thoughts quite as much. So I have less to tweet about because a lot of those things were kind of the basis for things I would write about. So, and I'm not mad at that, I consider Twitter a tool in getting better, but I think I'm at the point now that I have to be careful that it doesn't just become, well, we've talked before how good things can become bad things really easily, and I think that's kind of where it could be if I just let it, but I don't think it'll be a problem. I've been pretty good about controlling it, so. I just take way more selfies now. No. No, not at all.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So, all right.
Well, speaking of good things becoming bad things, our topic for tonight is kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hopefully convey this properly.
Sweet.
Since it's been about a month or so.
Yeah, right.
I thought about this. So there's a podcast called 20,000 Hertz, and it's literally the words 20 and 1,000 and Hertz, not the number 20 or anything like that.
Mm.
And it's a really great podcast. If anybody's looking for nice, simple, easy to, quick listens, they're typically about 20 minutes, and they're all based on sound, which is why it's called 20,000 Hertz. And the topics are varied, but they all have something to do with sound. And they had this one that was about, basically about being on an airplane, flying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's titled Fight or Flight, and it is episode 22, number 22 of 20,000 Hertz, and we'll have a link for the podcast if you want to listen to it. But the point of the podcast was really about, it went into, fear and how our fight or flight mechanism, which is a good thing. It's the reason that human beings have survived on the face of the earth for as long as we have, is because we have this part of our system, because it's part of our nervous system. It's part of, it's our muscles, it's our internal organs. Everything kind of plays a part of fight or flight. And it is something that is there to save us and help us. But like some things, it can also hurt us and get in the way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the podcast really went into the idea, which I thought was really where, to me, I think it kind of ties in with mental health, is that we have, when fight or flight happens, we have this one thing that kind of screws things up, and that's our imagination.
Yeah.
And this applies to anything that gives us the fight or flight, process starts in our body. And so there's a website called Very Well Mind, and we'll have a link for this too, where I looked up and it said how the fight or flight response works. And it goes into the basic symptoms: dilated pupils, paler flesh skin, rapid heartbeat and breathing, trembling. And these are all things that our body is saying, okay, we're going to be ready. We're going to be ready to run, or we're going to be ready to do battle. And so, our pupils and everything is, the blood is getting run through the body, and everything is we're getting into a state of preparedness.
Yeah.
And that for a lot of people who have, that these are things like, we have the rapid heartbeat and the rapid breathing. We don't typically notice that our pupils are dilated or that our skin is paled, but we get the sweat, or whatever, it's like that. But this is for us to deal with stress and danger. These things happen, but a lot of times it can freak us out because our imagination takes over.
Yeah.
And how it really applies to air travel is, and the reason that this is on this podcast is the sounds of an airplane. And because we don't know what they are.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I've never flown anywhere, but I've heard, various sounds, or people tell stories about various sounds they've heard on them. So I imagine it would could kind of freak you out.
Yeah, and it was interesting. The podcast was using the sounds of an airplane to talk about how fight or flight can mess with us, but it's also the way that we can also utilize our surroundings to get ourselves out of this. And this applies to so many things, especially like for me, I can be very emotional, and especially with people. When you run into that person that you don't want to see or that you haven't seen for a while or whatever, it's like an ex or something like that. And what happens? Your heart rate goes up, clammy skin, right? And even these are parts of like, when I've gone through periods of stress in life, whether it was from relationship or work or something like that, I don't eat as much, I lose weight. It's like having fight or flight happening all the time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that made it worse, and one of the things that messes with people on airplanes, is our imagination.
Yeah.
And we start going into confirmation bias.
Yes.
And we stop thinking logically. We start looking for the reasons why this airplane is about to fall into pieces.
Right.
All around us.
Yeah. Which
we focus
really
on,
quick. This is exactly what I do when I'm in a car also. That's what I'm doing generally when I'm in a car, is I'm looking for, because I'm convinced there's going to be a car accident.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's good fun.
And so the one thing that leaves us is basically problem solving. We go from problem solving to imagination. Mm-hmm. And it was great the way they were presenting this. They had, some experts and whatever doing it. They talked a little bit about just the facts. Like, this was amazing. 11 million to 1 chance of an accident in an airplane. Mm-hmm. And even if there is an accident, you still have a 96% survival rate.
Right.
It's astounding. Mm-hmm. And because there's so many redundancies on an airplane.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes multiple things to go wrong for something to really go wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it really has to be pretty catastrophic. Mm-hmm. It's like 200 times safer than driving, and, blah, blah, blah. And so it really comes down to the reliability of airplanes is 99.9999999%, right? It's unbelievable. However, when you're on there and the fight or flight mechanism kicks in, what I liked is they talked about being aware of it, that it's happening. And this applies to so much, I think, for mental health too. Mm-hmm. Is that, okay, when your heart starts to rapidly beat, if you start feeling that flush, okay, recognize these symptoms for what they are. It's your body's natural reaction to a stressful situation.
Right.
And these are, these things can be triggered by, phobias, which can become panic attacks. Mm-hmm. These are all, and one of the things that you can do, and we've talked about this a bunch of times, is in recognizing this, that our adrenal gland just went into haywire and is getting us ready to run, is to get yourself out of that fear and imagination and get yourself back into problem solving.
Right.
And focusing on the now. And like on the podcast, they talked about looking over at a person that's, it's not going to help if the person next to you is freaking out and losing their mind.
Right.
However, if the kid is, one aisle over and he's got his, his little earphones on and he's watching some, silly cartoon, or he's reading a book or drawing or whatever like that, is to focus on that, like something that's actually happening.
Right.
Like to not, to get out of your imagination, because our imagination is what screws with us.
Right.
And I totally thought about it, like, when I think about when I'm in stressful situations, how everything becomes future casting.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
And it's this is part of our natural reaction, because our body wants to get us ready. Mm-hmm. Like if we're in the woods and you hear a sound, could that be a bear? Well,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you need to be ready for that.
Right.
So that's That's good imagination. That's imagination that can save your life.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Right? And so now, but it's like, okay, if there is no possibility of a bear, meaning that, let's just say I'm not actually in the woods, I'm in, Central Park in New York,
Yeah.
and I hear a noise, it's probably not a bear.
Might be. I mean,
Well, it could.
no.
Could
That's how
be,
the
yeah.
That's how the surprise bears get you.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Surprise!
Yep. You know, this is based, like I said, this is what happens to me, like when I'm in cars, and my therapist mentioned to me a very similar concept, which, and I've talked about it on here before, which is essentially, you know, look, it's like, am I safe? You know, am I in danger right now?
Yeah.
Am I safe? And if the answer is no, then essentially, which is what your brain should do, is that's the fight or flight scenario. Is your brain should go, am I safe? No. Run. You know, or am I better off fighting, kind of a thing. You know, it'll go through that tree. And in the, you know, when I'm freaking out in a car or somebody on a plane, it'd be like, you know, am I in danger? It'd be like, no, I'm not. And it's like, well, you know, to try to help you get your thinking, like you were just saying, whether it's to distract you or to get your thinking back to where you are problem solving or being logical rather than catastrophizing, you know.
That's it. Yep.
It helps. I won't say it, you know, fixes it, but it certainly helps.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that they talked about, is how do they help people with these fear of flying. And one of the things they talked about is this idea of exposure therapy. Mm-hmm. And also this, you know, like you saw, this is a lot about catastrophizing things, and no pill, no amount of alcohol is going to help you not catastrophize.
Yeah.
If anything, it could probably help you do it even worse, given the the circumstances.
Yeah.
But that using pills or any sort of something to basically numb it is just as bad as like going on the internet and reading about all the things that could go wrong. It's like you're looking for the wrong information.
Yeah.
You know, you're not actually doing anything to help you. Mm-hmm. And one of the things they did for this show is they went through the sounds of a plane starting, what the sounds are, where they're coming from, and what they are. Mm-hmm. So they're no longer a scary thing.
Right.
It is this door closing. It has a distinct thing. This is the air compressor turning on to spin the engines, you know, the jet engines, that kind of stuff. And the same thing happens with us when it comes to our daily life, is to allow ourselves to have the experience of fear and of anxiety, but within the context of our daily life, and get through it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what
because you don't want to, like you said earlier, you don't want to eliminate your, you know, fight or flight, because that, you know, because then obviously you wouldn't be able to recognize danger. And that's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
It's like you said,
that's the whole point.
You know, you go back to like caveman days and is, you know, like, oh, my spider sense is tingling, run, you know, kind of a thing. Yeah. And that's what it's supposed to be for, or even now, not just then, but you know, now too. And it's not something you want to completely mute, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you have the reaction, and, you know, now that you know what the physiological part of it is, you know, if that starts to happen, it's like, okay, here's an opportunity to start putting in the tools before your imagination pretty much runs wild, and you're really going to have a hard time. And this is going to be tools that we've used all the time, like focus on your breathing.
Yep.
You know, one of them was that idea of grounding yourself into the moment, like you talked about. It's like, look at, if somebody is perfectly content sitting next to you in the situation, then there's no reason you shouldn't be content in the situation. You know, we're safe. Everything's, you know, nothing bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, get out of your head and maybe get into what somebody else is doing.
Right. Like my therapist told me with that, cause she's, when she was talking about the, am I in danger? It's like, she's like, could something happen to you? Absolutely. But is anything happening to you right now? And if it's not, then you don't need to be, freaking out or preparing for it to happen or what, cause, that's just keeping you in a state of tension that is really bad for you, Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And the imagination triggers protective instincts. Mm-hmm. Because you're just compounding it. And same thing happens with us when it comes to, things in our lives that happen. I talk about it all the time. My buddy Sean is always like, what? I can't read him. What's he thinking? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe go ask him or wait until he tells you. Otherwise, I don't know. It's like it just makes everything worse. Mm-hmm. And you have an opportunity to actively be in the moment, which once again, it's easier said than done, but like anything else, it's a practice. Mm-hmm. This is about practicing. This is about getting a little bit better, at dealing with these things.
Yeah.
We also have the page that just talks about techniques of taming fight or flight responses. And it talks about this. This is the other thing that was talked about on the podcast is when is it abnormal? Now on the podcast, they talked about it. There's a therapist that was talking, when you're unable to do your regular daily activities, when you're unable to show up at work, now it's maybe become anxiety.
Right. Which is funny. We've mentioned that plenty of times on here before. It's like, when is it time to get help? When it's negatively affecting your life. And it's the same, same scenario here. If you see that it's, like your fear of something is keeping you from, like me, I have an immense fear of being in cars, but I still try to not, I try not to just sit home all the time. I try to make myself go out and get into them because if I don't, it'll just get worse,
Yep.
To the point that I never leave the house, basically.
Yeah. And that's, and anyone that suffers from anxiety, bipolar disorders, has had, has post-traumatic distress, any sort of history of verbal or physical abuse, mm-hmm. you're going to be more sensitive to this natural response of our bodies.
Yeah.
It's going to be more extreme. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times it's going to take more work to get it under control, mm-hmm. And especially when it comes to, PTSD, that is going to require some professional help. But, mm-hmm. When it comes down to like just working on breathing and things like that, like, part of the fight or flight mechanism is the shallow breathing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because you're quickly oxygenating the blood, right? Mm-hmm. So here's the thing you do. When you start noticing you're taking those breaths out of your chest, is to turn those into breaths from your abdomen.
Yeah.
Change where it is. Get the belly doing the breathing rather than your chest doing the breathing. Mm-hmm. That's a simple thing.
And the beautiful part about that too, it allows you can use that as your grounding also.
Exactly.
Because you can focus on, feeling like pulling, like visualizing the muscles kind of pulling the air in and out.
Yep. And like with, they didn't talk about it, but I think about like anything where it's like driving a car on a plane. It's like, okay, no, it's not the ground, but you can put both feet on the floor that's in front of you.
Yeah.
You can picture, okay, I'm sitting straight, my feet are on the floor. Mm-hmm. I'm grounding myself.
Yeah. You can still go through like the senses while you're doing that, like what do I see? What do I smell? All that stuff. So
that's it.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, placing your actual hand on your stomach, mm-hmm. so you can feel where the breath is coming from, or the other one on your rib cage. And these are all things, that as you, it talks about, this article talks about, move your breath into your expand your belly outward, allowing it to inflate. So you're inhaling and you're feeling the process of it.
Yeah.
You're actually feeling the physical response of your hand moving outward, and then now move your breath back in and back up into your chest and get in those. And those are tools for getting you out of that imagination.
Right.
And back into what is, basically problem solving. Because that's what you're doing at that point.
Yep. Yeah. Because the longer you sit in the kind of fight or flight scenario, or you start doing the future casting and all that stuff, it's, if you are someone who's prone to heavy anxiety or panic attacks, it's like you're going to work yourself into that scenario, and you still might, even using these other techniques and stuff, but it's what you can do at the time to help, cause like you said, it's like, drinking or popping pills and stuff. It's like, don't get me wrong, those can help. And, there's always a time and a place for all these things, but if you can help, yourself a little bit so you don't have to do those things, that could be very favorable for you,
Yeah, for sure. And there's, and it really kind of ties into like one of the things with, where people do have abnormal reactions, with like PTSD and stuff. They get into cognitive behavioral treatments where you're actually learning to interpret your environment differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
That takes some help. The mindfulness is one thing. That's something that all of us can start working on today.
Yeah. And
you can sit down for a minute.
It's not easy, like you mentioned, and it's something that you need to continue working on. If you stop using it, you can have regression to where it won't become natural. You'll have to really think about it. The more you do it, the less you have to think about these things, because you really are just retraining your brain, because it's been distorted. So you've got to get it, like we've been saying the whole time, get it back to problem solving and logic.
Yeah, because there's another article on Very Well Mind that talked about the difference between fear and anxiety. And anxiety is your tip off.
Yep.
That's anxiety is walking up to the roller coaster ride. It's like fear is when you actually finally go off the other edge.
Yeah.
That's
right. Yeah.
When you get to the peak and you start falling, that's fear.
Yeah.
Everything else was anxiety.
Yep.
And the anxiety, if that is our little tip. It is our little view into what our body's about to do. Mm-hmm. And then that's why all those physiological responses are so good. The heart rate, vision narrowing, your hearing becomes more acute because, that's our body saying we need to prepare for something.
Right.
And it's like, there's ways to, you now have an indicator to say, okay, let's try that breathing stuff I was practicing. Mm-hmm. 'Cause if you haven't practiced it, it's not going to probably work that well. That's my experience. It's like, if I'm not practicing my meditation, it's not there when I need it.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was getting at a little bit ago, is like, if you don't keep working on these things, that you kind of regress to where it's not going to help, because it's not a natural thing at that point. Because when you go into fight or flight, it's like, it's, I think I've mentioned this on here before. It's like, the reason that like UFC fighters train so much, and part of that is so that when you get punched in the face, you can still instinctively react, because you may not be able to think logically because you just got punched in the face, and, that's part of it though, is so that you can kind of, react and, like I said, and protect yourself, all those kind of things that are important to do, that because of all that practice, it's become like muscle memory at that point.
That's it.
Like they recognize a scenario and just act, because that's what their training does,
Some of this is like, the one thing that I read that I thought was just really profound is that our bodies cannot discern the difference between a threat that is real or imagined.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Our body reacts the same no matter what. So, and that's that idea is like, okay, the fighter is training themselves so that it doesn't matter whether it's real or imagined. I have control over this. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the idea of developing these tools, is to get to a point where you can short circuit that imagined. And that's like my worst anxiety moments in my life are things that are honestly imagined. Mm-hmm. I don't face any real fears on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Most of the time it's in my imagination, and my body's going to react the same regardless. Mm-hmm. It's going to go into this response because that's what it's designed to do.
Yep.
It's there for a purpose. And so I I thought this was it's a fun podcast to listen to, so it's worth it because there's a lot of really good information. And the one thing that I thought that I took away the most of it is this idea that with the right, anytime we can educate ourselves, I know for myself, the more I can educate myself on these things about me as a human being, the better I am to start discerning the differences between real and imagined fears, and to get out of when I'm putting myself into a place all on my own and I don't need to.
And honestly, that really seems to be, again, I'm not a doctor, but that seems to be kind of the crux of or the base of dealing with anxiety is relearning how to figure out is it a real threat or is it not a real threat? And, and it's not easy. It's very tough. Like I said, I'm fighting with it, in cars and stuff. It's better than it used to be, but I'm still not comfortable at all, and the longer I'm in them, the more uncomfortable I am, so it's problematic for me. But I have to keep telling myself, like my therapist said, it's like sitting there, it's like, I'm safe in this car. Again, could something happen? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, I mean, no different than, I could just be walking around. My house is my safe zone, but I could be walking around in here and just keel over dead.
True.
It's like, just because I'm here doesn't mean I am truly safe. It just means that I'm perceiving myself as safe. And in the car, if I can get that same thought, like most people, like when you get into a car, do you feel all of a sudden like heightened awareness and like, oh man, there's going to be this and this coming everywhere?
Yeah.
No, right?
Not at all.
I do. Yeah. And that's the difference is I trying to get to where I don't, because if I can get in, maybe not all the way, because sometimes these things you can't win. You just keep making, progress, but if I could get to that point, then that would be great. I can accept that. Like I said, if I could drive, I wouldn't need to drive all the time. Just the fact that I could get to the point that I could would be a massive move. So that's the goal that I've been working toward, but it's a real slow process.
I think you nailed it on that one thing, is that bringing up what's the opposite of that anxiety when I'm home, when I feel like I have, because once again, it's not your body that's sensing that you're safe. Mm-hmm. It's just your brain.
Yeah.
Your brain has said, this is a safe place. I'm okay.
Yep.
That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. It is. It really is.
And it really makes it so it's like when I get myself all worked up over something, it's my own doing most of the time. Yeah. It's not, I'm not running into the rattlesnake on the trail. Mm-hmm. I'm not. That's legit fear.
Yeah.
My fear is self-centered typically, and it's about me, not getting treated the way I feel like I deserve.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, really, that's most of the time.
Yeah.
It truly is. It's, or getting wrapped up in what somebody may think about me, or that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Which just,
like that's what I was talking about earlier with the basket thing, it's like, why do I care? Okay, so your options are drop everything and get laughed at there, or maybe someone thinks whatever of you when you're carrying the other, but you're not going to drop anything. One is almost a guaranteed being laughed at, the other isn't, and look which one I chose.
Yep. Exactly.
Right? It's stupid, but that's what happens. Your brain, it's that distorted thinking. It doesn't, you're not thinking logically, even though you think you are, which was, a point I've made over and over to a lot of people, and in fact, Jen mentioned it, because I mentioned it to her at one point when she's like, I feel like I'm controlling this, and I'm like, I felt the same way before I went in for help, and that is a point I can't drive home enough.
Interesting.
Because that is one of the biggest distorted, that's what it was. I was so distorted that I thought I was thinking logically, So that's why we have to keep...
in actual problem solving, but you really weren't.
But I wasn't. I wasn't even close to being in problem solving. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So that was my first huge breakthrough in therapy. Once I hit that, it was like, all of a sudden it was like my mind was blown and I'm like, okay, let's do this, and that kind of, and it's been a lot of work, as we've said in this, it's like, this isn't just something that just poof and oh yeah, I'm great at it. It's, usually got to take some work. The, oh shoot, I forgot what it's called. The immersion therapy is an interesting idea though, is in that if sounds on planes bothered you, I bet you can find airplane sounds somewhere on the internet that you could probably subject yourself to, learn what they are.
Yeah.
And I bet that wouldn't bother you as much when you go, on a plane. Cause like, I just saw something the other day they were talking about for, tinnitus, that there's a therapy where they basically expose your brain to that sound, and over time, your brain starts to ignore it. So it's helped people reduce their tinnitus. Or not really reduce it, but they don't notice it as much.
Just not focus on it, exactly.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've noticed with mine, is when I focus on it, like mine's been bad this last week. I had a couple nights where I woke up and it literally was just this loud, like, I would have thought that somebody was setting off an alarm in the house.
Yeah. Oh,
it was so loud in my ear. And that's why a lot of people, they play pink noise or, in earplugs so they sleep, because it wipes it away.
Yeah, exactly. But it works, in a very similar fashion, is that that's what immersion therapy is exposing yourself, or exposure therapy, whatever it's called, it's, you just basically keep putting yourself in that scenario and eventually you'll break through, or it'll at least help. Like the tinnitus, it's not gonna, from what they said, it won't solve it. There's still no cure for it.
It's still there.
But again, like I saw a thing the other day about that new drug that got approved for migraines. That it helps kind of shut off the switch that for the pain or whatever. But in the long run, it ends up preventing. For some people, it prevents migraines. It's like, even reducing, I'm sure, like, if I was like, hey, Henno, I could reduce your tinnitus by 50%, you'd probably be like, dude, I'm in, Yeah. So.
Even if it's not a cure, if it's helping me deal with it. I think that's the thing with the point of this podcast, was this idea that there are certain things that should be a normal part of our life.
Yeah.
It shouldn't make it difficult for, us to do something. And so here are ways to get to that point.
Yeah.
And that's why I just loved learning about what the sounds were, because I learned a bunch of stuff that I didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
Like I always hear them, or I feel them. Like, like for me, I've always wondered why the plane suddenly gets hot. It feels like the air conditioning comes off right before everything starts up. Well, it's because there's an air compressor for the AC, and they use the air compressor to spin the jet engines. So they can't,
right?
Because I'm always like, oh boy, it's going to get stuffy in here. Like, oh wow, oh, it's getting hot. This is going to be horrible. And then the next thing you know, I'm comfortable again.
Right. Meanwhile, the whole time you're telling me about this, I'm picturing an episode of Star Trek where, and it's not any specific one, it happens in a bunch, but in a Next Generation's the one that's popping in my head. Like, Geordi will be like, well, we did this and we diverted all the power to the warp drive, or whatever.
Totally.
So that because that really is what they're doing. They're diverting that to getting the plane off the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, and once the engine spins up, it automatically goes back to cooling.
Mm-hmm.
But the cooling slowly comes up versus when they shut it off, it dramatically shuts off.
Right. Huh.
Right. And it was interesting, because I'm like, oh wow, because it never consumes me, but it is something that makes me kind of get a little anxious.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy, it's going to get hot in here.
For multiple reasons, like not only just the idea of it that can make you anxious, but literally being warm can, because it's elevating your blood pressure. And as you mentioned, that's one of the things. My therapist mentioned that to me, because I told her the one time I was, this was like last year, I was talking about how it was hot outside and how I'd realized that my anxiety was really high. And she was like, she's like, it's because when that happens, it's mimicking fight or flight. And
fight or flight.
As a result, you're having anxiety because you're supposed to. That's part of the fight or flight.
Yep.
Unfortunately, with me, like you said, I'm more sensitive to it, so it feels higher than it is.
Yeah.
You know? And then I start,
yeah.
So it makes perfect sense. I had never thought of it, but when she explained it, I was like, oh yeah, duh. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Yeah, so there you have it. Check it out in the show notes, the links, and hopefully you'll get something out of it like I did.
Yeah, I actually, as we're talking about it and stuff, I'm like, I might go listen to that episode because I'm kind of curious. So, yeah. Good fun. Yeah, like you said, all the links are in the show notes. I've already put them in there, in fact. So, yep. So, all right. Well, you think we got covered?
That's an episode.
As I've been known to say. Yeah. That's a show. Yep.
That's a show.
Yeah. Well, as Jen usually says here, if you'd like to continue the conversation with us, you can reach us on our website at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. You can email us if you'd like to at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com. You can find the show on Twitter at thecrazylifepod, where I post when new episodes go up. You can find Jen on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. And how about you, sir?
You can find me on Twitter at Ida Heno, and you can find me on Facebook at Heno Heiter. You can message me there, and you can also go visit our Facebook group.
Yep, at facebook.com/group/Crazy Life Podcast.
And we actually had somebody new join this week. I got to do the approval.
Sweet.
So welcome.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, everybody should go join. Or
yeah, because the podcast get posted there, and if Brian gets some information about something, he posts it there.
I need to get better about it, but yeah, I have posted some stuff, at least that I found interesting on there.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find my other podcast at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. That show's not safe for work, so be warned. We're part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So please go over there and take a look around or listen, maybe find yourself some new podcasts. If you'd like to help the show out, we'd greatly appreciate it if you're using Apple Podcasts. If you'd rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. We need more reviews. So, I knew everybody listening, if you go review our show, please. I said,
very nice of you.
I said, please.
I said, please.
If you're using Spotify or Stitcher or other apps, if they have a like or share option, please use those. Or, just share our Twitter post when, with the show link or anything on, like our Facebook post or something. If you would, we would greatly appreciate it. Yeah, I think that's all that stuff. If you'd, we're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind, just two guys this week, just sharing our experiences and our thoughts. If you feel as though you need help, please reach out to somebody. Again, I know that's the hardest step, but, please try to do so. So that you can, stop suffering, or not suffer as much, maybe. I don't want to say stop, because, that's not always true. But please reach out and get the help you need. There's tons of people out there willing to help. There's all sorts of websites and phone numbers and, all that. You just gotta do it. There's stuff you can do without, and stay anonymous and all that kind of stuff even too. So, please find help if you need it. If you find yourself thinking about suicide or harming others, please, well, not just suicide, but harming yourself or others. Please reach out to somebody, tell a friend, see if you can get someone to come over so you're not by yourself, or get a hold of one of the, suicide prevention hotline numbers or a crisis line. So maybe they can stay on the phone with you through your crisis. If you find yourself planning, or writing a suicide note or notes of, that kind of nature, please reach out right then. Definitely don't ignore those red flags, so that maybe nothing drastic happens. And, reach out to somebody. I thought I was going to do okay this week, and then I've just kind of lost steam as it's going here. Reach out to somebody. You never know when it might make their day. It'll probably make you feel good too. But just, tell them you love them, tell them you appreciate them. Just say hi, ask them how they're doing or if they need anything, whatever. And, cause you never know, just that little notion might help kind of change somebody's life, or it may save their life. So, definitely do that. And one last thing I've mentioned before that I keep meaning to put in there every week, but I don't, which is, be good to yourself. Again, treat yourself the way you treat your friends when they tell you they have something going on, Try to be less hard on yourself.
Yep.
Again, that's not easy. I understand. Most of what we talk about on here is easier said than done.
Yep.
Unfortunately. So.
It is true.
Yep. All right. You want to take us out of here, Anno?
Yeah. When you're out there living your omelet, remember you can make that omelet just as spicy as you want. Just reach over, grab a little Tapatio sauce, and just slather it all over.